Shabbat Shalom. Tonight, we celebrate our country's independence. Over this coming weekend, many of us will attend barbecues, see fireworks, celebrate our American heritage. Although for many of us this is natural, for much of Jewish history, this is actually revolutionary. Throughout most of history, Jews were considered outsiders in whichever land they resided. They lived in their own neighborhoods, they had their own food, they mingled with their own people. But beginning in the 1800s, Napoleon gave us the option of being either Frenchmen or Jews, not both. By choosing to be French, we were implicitly and explicitly giving up much of our Judaism. We could choose to be part of the larger society, but in exchange, we were expected to give up our expectation of a return to a homeland, our unique dress, our foods, and many of our rituals and customs. For the 1800s, this offer itself was revolutionary. For the first time, Jews were given the option to be something other than just Jewish. We were being given a chance to join the growing secular culture, not as second-class citizens, but as full citizens, minus our antiquated Judaism, of course. And many of our ancestors decided to take the opportunity to pursue a more secular life. While that choice was revolutionary for its time, it was still limiting. We had to give up one part of our identity in order to fully claim another. The founding of America gave us a new option. For the first time, we no longer had to choose one or the other. We could be both Jewish and American. We could honestly celebrate our Jewish heritage as openly as we celebrated our American heritage. And in fact, much of our American history is bound up in Jewish values, symbolism, and even our language of Hebrew. Over the years, we've all heard the stories about how the first Europeans to settle America were the Puritans, who came from England in search of religious freedom. But they didn't come in order to allow everyone to freely practice their religion, nor did they come to be free from religion. They actually came to practice their own religion freely. As such, they imagined themselves much like the biblical Israelites in Egypt during the time of Exodus. They saw England as Egypt, and the king akin to Pharaoh. For them, crossing the Atlantic Ocean was symbolic of crossing the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea. And the first Thanksgiving that was celebrated in 1621 was likely modeled after Sukkot, the Jewish harvest holiday that celebrates the gratitude of the harvest. But even more interesting and less well known than the Puritans' connections to Judaism and the Hebrew Bible is that of our founding fathers. They too saw the connection between their own lives and those of the Jews of Egypt. They saw the country that they were creating as comparable to the Jews settling the Promised Land. So strong was this feeling that the first seal proposed as the official seal of the United States depicted Jews crossing the sea with the motto, "Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God." And the seal was favored by the likes of Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. As the Hebrew Bible was an important part of the foundation of our country, many of the first universities, such as Harvard, Yale, William and Mary, Princeton, Brown, and King's College, later Columbia, had Hebrew as part of their school seal and required students to study it. Of course, at that time, it was akin to Latin, a dead language that wasn't spoken. So prevalent was Hebrew in the late 18th century that some Yale students actually delivered their commencement speeches in Hebrew. And even more amazing was that the knowledge and interest in Hebrew was so widespread that there was a rumor circulating at the time of the American Revolution that certain members of Congress proposed that the use of English be formally prohibited, as it was the language of England, and that Hebrew be substituted for it. If our founding fathers' connection to Judaism had been limited to the university classrooms and an interest in Hebrew, dayenu. But the halls of our democracy is also filled with Jewish values and Jewish references. Many of the early legal state codes are based on biblical laws. Over half of the statutes of the New Haven Code of 1655 are biblically based. More permanently and more well-known is the inscription on the Liberty Bell at the Independence Hall. It comes directly from Leviticus 25:10. Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants thereof. And many years later, the inscription chosen to be written on the Statue of Liberty was written by a young Jewish immigrant, Emma Lazarus. Though many of our founding fathers had a great respect for Judaism, not all of them were big fans of Jews themselves. Like the leaders of many other countries, many of our leaders, including Thomas Jefferson, thought that the Jews would be much better off and more accepted if they would only get a better secular education and stop being too Jewish. However, these men's personal thoughts on the Jewish people never affected their respect for Judaism as a religion, or their willingness to allow Jews to freely practice their religion. George Washington, in his letter to the Touro Synagogue, the first synagogue in America, wrote, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in the land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit safely under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." And John Adams, who was also not the biggest fan of Jews themselves, but had great respect for the Jewish faith, wrote in 1809, "I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. If I were an atheist and believed in blind eternal fate, I should still believe that the fate had ordained the Jews to be the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. If I were an atheist of another sect, I still should believe that chance had ordered the Jews to preserve and propagate for all mankind the doctrine of a supreme, intelligent, wise, almighty sovereign of the universe, which I believe to be the greatest essential principle of all morality and consequentially of all civilization. They are the most glorious nation to have ever inhabited the earth. The Romans and their empire were but a bauble in comparison to the Jews. They have given religion to 3/4 of the globe and have influenced the affairs of mankind more and more happily than any other nation, ancient or modern." Whatever some of these men may have felt personally about Jews themselves, their high regard and their respect for Judaism and Jewish values is evident in their words and in their actions, and ultimately in their legacies. As Jews, we should be proud not only of our Jewish history, but of our immense contribution to America that we know and celebrate. Shabbat Shalom and happy 4th of July.